All right. Hello, everyone. This is Emilio Garcia at Bountify. Welcome to another episode of the Man Gen Studio. And with me, as always, is Miranda Jenkins. How are you, Miranda?
Good.
Awesome. Having a good Friday, I hope, everyone. And today we are having a conversation with a couple of members of the team at Grain, a conversation, a platform and sales intelligence, if I recall well, company that we closely work with for our own work at Bountify. With me is Jeff Whitlock, CEO, and Cameron Walker, growth marketer. How are you guys?
Great. Excited to be here. Super great. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So, well, I'll start right away, Jeff and Cameron. Would you mind, I will start with you, Jeff, telling me a little bit about yourself, about obviously your role at Grain and, how has been the evolution for you during the company. And from there, diving a little bit today on how, in particular, Grain, works around growth marketing and, hopefully we can dabble a little bit in your own demand generation tactics or strategies, the ones that you feel comfortable sharing of sure.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Jeff. I'm the CEO of Grain. Uh, my background is I've been doing startups for 7 years now.
Mm.
And prior to that, I was a product manager and started my career in consulting. As far as what is Grain doing primarily for demand gen, our two primary channels are um, SEO and also what we call some combination of word of mouth and casual contact. So word of mouth is basically, people have a good experience and tell others to try Grain. And then casual contact is Grain is a AI note taker. And so it'll join calls and people will get the summaries after the calls. And oftentimes they'll say, oh, this is a really nice summary. And they'll sign up from seeing those summaries. So as people have meetings, they actually expose other people to Grain. And that's also a
Yes.
driver of our signups.
Good. Yeah. And I think diving right away into, the one big portion that you mentioned, which is SEO, just tell me in your experience, maybe from these and other companies or consulting that you have done, how do you think it has evolved over the years? And I think particularly now with the rise of AI, what do you think have changed and will continue to change, and what things haven't changed and will be continue to be relevant? It doesn't matter what happens, with technology down the road.
Well, I think we're in a real, I mean, I think we're in a pretty interesting time period of flux in SEO, and I wouldn't argue that we've figured it out or that I know what's going to happen, but clearly something big is happening with all the AI tools that are effectively functioning as a replacement for Google search. It used to be like, I think, you know, I'll throw out a number. 99% of the time when someone had a question, they would ask it through Google, right? My guess is I mean, it's still probably a pretty high percentage, but it's probably eroded pretty dramatically in the last year. And I can only imagine that momentum gaining, or that trend gaining steam. So with tools like Perplexity, obviously, and Chat GPT and Claude, and there's all these other tools that are arguably better than Google for answering direct questions that you need the answers to. I still think so. So the way I think this is going, and obviously Google knows this is a problem because they've responded by adding their own little, like, what are those called? AI, like their AI
Overviews.
overviews. I
Yeah.
think are worse in many cases actually than because they still have to, like, their business model is people clicking on links, and so they can't make the overview so good that that they decrease their
Yes,
link
it's a
clicks.
hard compromise.
Yeah, exactly. So they've got some conflicting incentives here, like classic innovator's dilemma type stuff.
Mm.
So they're in a challenging spot. And so I think for like direct questions, like, what was the, what's the best, what's the tool that does this, or what's the capital of, it's Turkey or whatever, like things that are just like very obvious. I think it's very AI's superior to Google to get answers. I find myself almost never using Google to get answers to question that there's like a clear answer to. So I think my belief is that a lot of SEO is going to move more towards middle of the funnel type stuff, and different types of queries, like queries where you're looking, like you are truly searching for a broader array of opinions or a perspective from different people on a question, or you're looking for options, potential ways to solve a problem. I think these things will be still relevant SEO, but I think that's a lot of this, like, top of funnel, mass keyword, generic type of, here are 17 tools you can use to do blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm not sure that's going to be as effective as it has been historically.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree that the the strategy overall will change in the short term on some of the tactics, especially the type of content that you write. That you will go to middle of the funnel instead of the questions that overview, but probably just ChatGPT and other AI tools will actually answer for users without even links, as you said, or references maybe to the sources. I We've been discussing, Miranda and I, this with prospects and clients for a long time. And I part of the question that I made, hopefully you agree on this one, is that also it's important to look at the fundamentals, right? The part that doesn't change even when technology is moving. I am of the belief that, especially for marketers just like myself, that we got into marketing at the moment that digital was ramping up, that we connected the goals of marketing with those of the things that you can accomplish on digital, and never question the foundation of it, right? Let me put you an example of what I mean is, when you say SEO, I'm assuming that Grain has a source of content, right?
Mhm,
Some
mhm.
place where you express your point of view. It can be your blog, it can be a podcast like what we're doing right now, it can be a series of videos, and that you use SEO as a way of distributing that content. In this particular case, when someone search for it, they will find one of those pieces. But the whole point of it has always been to present the brand for the first time to someone that is not aware of you guys, right?
Yeah,
So I think that that was a very valid exchange between non-buyers and the brand for a long time, right? Because that was pretty much the deal, right? If I'm not paying for showing up the brand in front of someone, then
I
I
have
will
to provide.
expose the brand in exchange for you getting out of it a valuable piece of information. But now that's changing, right? Because now you can get that valuable information without exposing a brand through
Yeah,
AI.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
we will have to figure out how we continue to use content and other distribution channels, because that's my view, right? That SEO is just another distribution channel. Even
yeah,
when we don't think it of it, it's not as clear as you when say social, when it's clearly a distribution channel for everybody. And for us, SEO, it isn't, but truly it is. It's just a
yeah,
distribution channel that is failing because, or to some extent, it's not working as well to some of the queries, and we will have to concentrate. So dealing into that, how do you see your own strategy evolving? Would you Are you thinking concerned, focusing more on social? Are you exploring order like in 10 places like Reddit or other places where there's also intent to some extent, but AI is still not using, I guess?
yeah. I mean, it's a good point. I think this is still very much an open question for us. We're still seeing positive results on the SEO front, more traditional SEO, and so I don't think we're going to abandon it, but I think we do recognize that we need to potentially change the approach and also augment with other things. So it's interesting because, like, I think a lot of the times we live on the front of these trends, and sometimes we tend to I know I've been guilty of this, like tend to overestimate their impact,
Yeah.
and things that are really like 10-year trends we assume are 2-year trends or 3-year trends. And so kind of feel like SEO is maybe in that ballpark where, like, I still think traditional SEO is going to work well and work for a while, and especially when you recognize that there's still going to be, I think, a lot of opportunity in sort of middle funnel content. Um, but I do think that at the same time, you got to be thoughtful about like augmenting and changing the approach. What's interesting is we're actually seeing. I mean, it's still very small volume, but because we asked people who tried Grain, like, where did you hear about us? We're actually for the first time seeing AI pop up in those answers
Yeah.
in non-trivial ways, and so we've been asking ourselves, like, how do we do this? Like, how do you do SEO for for AI? And that's an interesting thing, which I think obviously there's some initial thoughts out there on, but I don't think it's something that, like, we're in the very early innings of.
Yes. Now, I have a question that is it was gonna be fantastic, Jeff and Cameron, because I have both the marketer and the person that the marketer has to at least show some value from their efforts in the same conversation. So let me tell you another thing that I feel is going to be challenging for the next few years and how you are thinking about it is, yes, you will have to adapt. But the other thing that I feel all marketers got trained on from the early success of, SEO tactics and Google and all that, there was a very crystal clear attribution. I'm doing all these blog pieces, people is visiting the website, I can see they're coming from Google, and we're getting more opportunities and all that. And that's changing a little bit now, because you will have to believe, if you want to call it that way, right, that all these answers that you're providing that are not getting any clicks are positioning the brand, right? So I understand that, at least from our audience, that's a struggle for marketers and demand generation practitioners in general, because their bosses want to still see some, how do you show that what we are doing is working? How you guys are adapting to that, right? Recognizing that the playbook is changing, but at the same time, trying to strike a balance between, we know that we are doing things that are having impact on people, like when they see the logo of brain on Zoom conversation, that kind of impact. But at the same time, we cannot measure it as directly anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we're the perfect people to answer this question because we're still so early. And but I'll tell you, we just do a lot of bottom of funnel attribution. That's really what we
Hmm.
rely on. I feel like top of funnel attribution has always been hard to do well, and to not do it in a way that's misleading. Like, because you're always saying like, okay, was this the first touch point attribution, or was
Yeah.
this the second touch point, or et cetera, et cetera. And so at our stage, just given the complexity to do top of funnel attribution well and accurately, we honestly just rely heavily on bottom of the funnel. Meaning we ask our users, where did you hear about grain? And the way I think about it is, yeah, there's probably some inaccuracy there because, maybe they don't remember, or maybe they're not always, maybe they're skipping the question or not giving. But the way what I believe about it is, like, more often than not, like, the vast majority of users tell you the truth there, and what they remember is what mattered. So
Yeah.
so it really simplifies a lot of assumptions when you do it that way.
Hmm. Nice. The self-reported attribution. Okay. All right. And now that you mentioned at the stage that you are, if you can illuminate a little bit on the stage that you are right now. But the question that I have following on that one is, I'm of the belief that very early startups are doing a ton of marketing without calling it that way, just, by the conversations they have with potential investors and, talking about potential employees and kind of like the ecosystems where they grow. And it's a certain size when they truly can support a more, massive effort, like creating content and distribution on social media, or, SEO and all that. How do you have navigated that, Jeff, in the past? When do you know is the right time to say, well, we've been growing nice with this word of mouth, talking about the product, people organically doing that as they use the product, and now we need to start doing something more intentional. How that happened for you guys?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So to answer your question on like where we're at, is like, so we're at a few million of ARR.
Hmm.
This next year, hope to reach to double or so. So growing well, and but still kind of on the smaller side. And so I guess small is relative. I mean, when I first started as a startup CEO, I would have been stoked to get to 1 million, and now we're at a few, and we're like, oh, we're still too small. We got to get to 10. So 10 is
Yeah.
the next milestone for us. So to answer your second question about like when did we realize was the time, it's actually interesting because we hired a marketer who was kind of one of those like humble and hungry folks where uh we're just like, oh, bring it in, and then we didn't really manage them that closely because we're kind of doing other things. And this this
Yeah.
this young guy just basically built out our SEO and just kind of doing it himself, trial and error through like basically like 2 years of just kind of dinking around himself on it, and ended up building some initial foundations that worked really, really well. And so it was really organic for us because we're like, oh, hey, this SEO went from nothing to a pretty substantial, source of site traffic for us. And the traffic isn't as good as the traffic we get through our casual contact and word of mouth, but it still drives a healthy portion of our signups. And so that gave us that gave us the confidence to invest in it more and keep investing in it. So it's very like organic and not like that strategic, to be honest.
All right. And now following up on that one, and as you said, right, size is relative, but and it might not apply to you, but my little understanding of the ecosystem, I understand that, funding gets added to the company to some
Mhm.
extent when you are bootstrapping and all that. And I'm sure there's some expectation, if not pressure, from your investors
Yeah.
to make sure that you have an engine of growth, right? And kind of support to the next level. So I have this question is typically you will get from your board or investors or, like advisors more of a advice on focusing on developing a strong sales team at the beginning or a strong marketing agent like what you're doing right now, a little bit of both, like kind of where do they lean?
I think you shouldn't listen to them. And if any of my investors see this,
Oh, that was a nice answer.
yeah, no, seriously, I mean, some of the worst mistakes we've made is by over indexing on investor advice. The reality is they don't know your business and
Mm,
they're smart people and you should take what they say as a valuable data input. But just because they're investors does not shouldn't give them more right to your headspace than on any other, and maybe even less, because like again, they don't know your business. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so I mean, for example, we had investors that were like, you got to build a sales team, you got to build a sales team. Early on, we built a sales team and it was a abject failure, huge waste of money. Kind of like we had like a if you build it, the leads will come mentality, and just really, 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 really unfortunate waste of cycles. So that's my honest advice, which is like, hear your investors, but don't listen to them. They're just a data point. And to answer kind of your other question is like, is there a bias? I think the thing is like investors typically will have the bias of the type of businesses they've invested in or the business that they built. Cause a lot of investors are like former founders that turned investors. Um, and so that's going to be their bias. And that's great if you end up being very similar to the types of businesses they've invested in, or the types of business they built. But it can be a problem if you're not. And so you just need to, like I said, you need to understand your business. So like with Grain, like we are a PLG business. That's what we are. We do have sales as a component of our revenue because we get people who come in and would like that help. And so we offer that, but it is not in any way the engine of our growth. It's a contributing factor to our growth, but it's not our core engine.
Hmm. Gotcha. Now, following up on that one, I I believe that part of the reason, and this I believe, I'm not being on those meetings with investors in general, but I believe that part of the reason my intuition was that they will focus on sales, right?
Mhm.
Rather than marketing or organic efforts. But I believe that part of the reason is because, from my perspective, sales you can use to really direct where you're going to target the type of companies that you want to target, either industry or company size, and kind of like drive the product growth depending on the strategic goals of the company. And so, therefore, saying, well, we will focus on enterprise or mid market or
Right,
maybe
right, yeah.
very small business and all that. And on the marketing side, you can have some say on that when you use paid media, right? To some extent, at least focusing your dollars on that. But when you go for more organic SEO, word of mouth efforts, I have the feeling that it really depends on the features of the product itself, because that's what will cater to the kind of crowd that will read the content or get the product exposed. So what has been your journey on that one? Does the type of content that you write and kind of like the features of the product match the type of companies you're trying to be in front of? Or do you have any type of company in particular that you're going to be in front of, and content becomes a challenge? I don't know if I'm make sense of the question.
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple things there that I'll speak to. So the first one about like the bias of investors. Yeah, I don't necessarily want to generalize there, but if I were to generalize, like one other thing that I think is really nice about sales is not only can you target, but it's also very clear crank for growth. Like
Hmm.
if you have like a sales process, and especially if it's outbound, then it's like I hire 5 more reps turns into this much more revenue. And so it's a
Very
very
linear.
easy thing to scale if you're trying to scale. And that's what a lot of investors obviously want to encourage. Whereas marketing, maybe with paid, you can kind of like direct, there's like more of a direct link between inputs and outputs. With content and other types of, it's not at all like that, right? Like it's like slow build of compounding over time and then it starts to work, but it's like it's the inputs and outputs I think are a lot less linear. So I think that's another thing. And then to the second part of your question, I would say that I would say so I think that we've had a problem. This has been a problem with us at Grain, where some of our highest performing SEO articles bring in the wrong types of customers.
Hmm.
And I shouldn't say the wrong kinds of, but customers that like are not the ones that we say we target, have slightly different needs, are not maybe as valuable as customers. And what's interesting is like that's actually got us in trouble at points in time in our journey because everyone talks about, listening to your customers. And it takes a lot of discipline and rigor to understand this feedback we're hearing is actually not from this customer base we're trying to serve, and so we need to ignore it. And so it's got us in trouble by like pushing things onto a roadmap that shouldn't have been on a roadmap, uh, help time and effort and attention on things that really didn't move the needle for who mattered. So I think it's the way we think about it because we're a PLGO company is like it's fine if those people want to sign up and pay for Grain, that's great. But we just need to be really rigorous and disciplined of like recognizing who is our true segment and only kind of letting that segment have input on where we're headed and not let extraneous data, get us confused about what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. I guess it's that's if not the price, a little bit of the tax on when you do organic or content. You're gonna
Yeah, it's
you're
an
gonna cater
organic
to a
tax. I'm not
broader
saying that it's a
to
tax.
a broader population, right? And you will have this people outside of your TAM on all levels, right? From when you show up to who visit the website to who joins a demo or a trial to obviously who purchased the product itself. So that's great, Jeff. Great insight there. Moving into that direction, the other thing that we discover or we see constantly is that when we work with clients that are in more mature industries, products that have very well defined categories, obviously the rules of the game are kind of set up from a marketing perspective, right? The category is
Yeah.
known, where do you fit on it is known. You even, you already know if you are the top tier premium brand or the more lower tier and all that. But I think that for SaaS, but especially for products like yours, right, where you are on the edge of solutions that are evolving over time based on AI and things that are going on with video, one key challenge when you're creating content is in what category do we put ourselves,
Mhm, mhm.
right? Do we go for a well-known and try to present ourselves as different in the marketplace and the content that we create, or do we create something of our own a la HubSpot with inbound and kind of like define the category for the first time? What have been your journey there? How has that changed, evolved over the years as you mature your platform?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say we're not yeah, I'd say this is something we need to get better at. We've generally not I guess I'd say I'm skeptical of category creation,
Mhm.
especially at our size. I think you can spend a lot of time trying to figure out category creation. So we have never really like put in earnest effort to try to do it. Instead, we've kind of like tried to attach to the category we thought we were closest to at the various times. So, like right now, I think you mentioned in the intro, you called it something like revenue intelligence. We don't really attach to that category at the moment. We try to attach to AI note taking and conversation
Mhm.
intelligence. Um, so these categories are flexible and they've evolved, and I see them evolve in real time. So we've always kind of just try to attach to one or two categories that seem closest to what we're trying to do, even if they're imperfect. Um,
Mhm.
and then at some point, it might make sense for us to try and do our own category. But I just feel like at our size, it's sort of an exercise in utility. Could be wrong. Maybe that's undermined us, but that's kind of been my belief.
Yeah, no, I strongly agree. Is the benefit of creating a theory of your own is that obviously you, by definition, dominate it, but then a ton of your marketing effort will be to educating people about it
Right.
versus attaching an anchor that is easy to access and from there build up a differentiation or at least a reference to, okay, you're part of that group. I will put you in that bucket and I can move on,
Yeah.
right? So it's less expensive. Of course, it will be more crowded. Very nice. So I think this has been great, Jeff. Great answers, and it's also very helpful for us. I think I will close with a question for you, for our listeners. Some of our marketing professionals, especially the ones that are interested on the space, I might work for companies like Grain, right? And with all the things that are going on, as you were mentioning, this very savvy marketer that kind of like try to figure out on their own. What do you think are the abilities, the skills, the things that marketers right now, especially the ones that are entering the marketplace, need to pay attention to get hired, to get visible at and working for companies like yours and the rest of the industry? what are you looking for right now that probably is different because everything have changed?
Yeah, I think it really depends. Is the question targeted at people who are trying to become marketers, not like experienced marketers, people are trying to get into the industry? Is that
Mm-hmm. Yes.
yes. So I think whether you're coming out of college or whether you're a experienced professional is trying to pivot your career to marketing. For me, what I'm looking for is someone who's really good at conceptual problem solving. Um, they're good at understanding users, understanding business, and understanding the circumstance, and being able to have clear hypotheses that analyze and take those different elements to account. I'm also looking for someone who likes experimentation. I think experimentation right now is very, very important. And I'm not expecting you to be expert at experimentation, especially coming out of college, but someone who's at least oriented that way, like asking people, like, what experiments have you ran? Like, people, have you ran experiments in your own life? Like, for example, last night I put on a nightshades over my eyes because I'm experimenting with like trying to improve my sleep with the whoop and everything. And so like I
Uh-huh.
run a lot of experiment. Like, are you doing experiments in your life? Just
Mm.
some kind of like orientation towards experimentation would be the second thing. And then the third thing is just like really high quality craftsmanship in your writing, in your design, in your video product, whatever it is you've produced. Like, even if I go look at your social media, like you've done high quality work. And I think that's really important because wherever you point your attention towards, quality is so important, especially in the age of AI. It's like, I just think, I mean, it's already happening. So this isn't a unique insight, but we're just, the zone is just being flooded with so much lowest common denominator stuff that I think high quality has always been important, but will become more and more important over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I promised that was it was going to be the last question, but
Yeah,
I'm so sorry. I'm going to
I
ask
think that's
another
pretty
one.
good.
Um, because you mentioned this about the low quality. I'm of the belief that the other big thing is the in the short term. I'm sure in the long term it will be beneficial for every single client facing department. But in the short term, I think marketing and sales are not gonna be a net benefit for for buyers, because pretty much what's happening is what you're saying, right? Instead of using AI in a useful way to maybe outline the content, those who research and support your human directed research effort and trying to solve for clients, we are just pumping up average content that is the average of everyone else.
Yep.
Sales is even worse because now if we were doing this 20 emails per day, now we're doing
Oh
200
my gosh. Yeah.
personalized.
Yeah. Clay,
Right.
clay,
So
stuff like this.
because
Yeah.
because we are trying to really to add more supply to a limited demand, right?
Yeah.
There's just so many people searching for answers, and there's so many people with problems right now. However, the one that I believe truly benefit right away and is benefit right away is customer support. Right
Yeah.
there, you actually have a way of using AI to actually solve problems using knowledge bases, and just only if AI cannot solve it, you involve a human, right? Which
Yeah.
is the scarce resource here,
Yeah.
and demand obviously is all ever growing.
Well,
I don't know your take on that one. Do you feel that that's kind of like where some of the positive impact is showing up right now?
yeah, I think what another way of saying what you're saying is like the best applications of AI right now is where the incentives of the company are aligned with the incentives of the customer. And I think that's
Yeah, love it.
absolutely the case with support, because if you think about what do customers want with support, they want simple, quick answers, right? Simple, quick
Yeah,
answers. And the funny thing is, like, this is a digression, but like there's a lot of talk. This was like maybe a little bit old, but like 5 to 10 years ago, there's a ton of talk about customer empathy, like, oh, good customer success and customer support, have customer empathy. And then they did this research that's like people don't want empathy at all. They do not want the customer success
yeah,
to say, oh man, that stinks that this didn't work. What they want is just a really fast, quick answer that solves their problem. They don't even really want to connect with you as a human. Like, maybe that's not
yeah.
true for sales, but that's 100% true for customer support when they're facing a problem.
Yes,
And so AI is perfect for that. They don't no BSing, no like how was your day? It's just like give me the answer and get out of there. And that's what the company wants too, because the company doesn't want to have to pay people to, you know,
yes,
to sit around and type in messages and get on the phones and blah blah blah. So I think there's a really great alignment of incentives there. Whereas like with
yeah,
outbound sales, it's like, did I ask for, 50 emails? Like, I literally probably got 50 emails this morning from outbound people telling me like, no, that's not my incentive, but it's the company's incentive to send as many as possible because they're casting these really wide nets, and it's just a race towards the bottom, I think. But I guess maybe we'll see how that goes.
yeah. I I love that you're saying about the people loving or the success and all that. It's true. I When someone mentioned, yeah, well, you're gonna build a brand that people love because the connection and all that. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It's just that we have a bias for the brands that we like or we love, right? So you say, well, but look at this brand that I follow what's going on and I'm really appreciative of what they're doing in the space and all that. Yeah, but how many brands do you purchase on a given time frame for that purchase that you have that brand, and do you care the same for the others,
Yeah.
right, in the same way? And the answer is no. For most of the things that you buy, you don't even recognize the brand that is. So
Yeah.
as you're saying, for most
Like,
things we really are trying to get quick, fast, convenient, low friction. We are not in love with every single brand that we purchase. It's not that it doesn't happen, it's that most buyers for every single brand are really not in love with it, right?
yeah,
It's just
totally.
a handful.
And if they do come to love with it, it's because that brand has consistently solved the problem. So then the
Yeah,
brand becomes a substitute for quality, or like a totem for quality. I don't think people are like, oh, I'm gonna buy this shoe because it's a great brand. Usually it's because someone told me it's a great product, and then they try it, and then maybe over time, after wearing the shoe for a long time, they come to affiliate with the brand.
yeah, yeah, love it. And finally, I want to close that. I know a version of what you were saying is, are you doing experiments in your life? I used to have a boss in manufacturing in another life. And he, I remember, used to hire for the maintenance facility manager, right? Making sure that everything was clean on the manufacturing floor and all that. So his task was that he will find a reason to walk with the person to his car or her
Mm.
car or his car, and he will look at the car. And he was like, if your car is a mess, if you don't have your engine and all that, yeah, I will not trust you with the manufacturing
Piece
floor.
to the factories.
So
Yeah. That's
yeah,
awesome. I love that. I wouldn't be able to get that job right now. I've got 3 kids. My car is an absolute
yeah,
disaster.
yeah. That's what I usually will say to him. It's like, oh man, well, most of us will be in trouble. So yeah, fantastic, Jeff Cameron. Thank you. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to say, but this has been a blast. I really enjoyed our time here. And for our listeners, Um, if you don't want to know more about Jeff Cameron, what they are doing at Grain, just follow them on social. I'm sure you are
Yeah,
on mostly
LinkedIn
maybe
is
LinkedIn.
the
LinkedIn
best,
best. Mhm.
and then
Yeah,
grain.com, super easy to find us on grain.com.
fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much. And to our listeners, until the next one.